Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of his ship, watching the stars stretch into white lines as they jumped through hyperspace. The transport vessel New Horizons was not the biggest ship in space, but it was his ship, and he had been flying passengers safely for 15 years. Today was supposed to be just another routine trip back to Earth. The ship carried 42 passengers, mostly families returning home from the frontier colony of Haven Prime. Jake knew most of them by name. There was Dr. Alan Webb, a scientist, who studied alien creatures. Commander Rita Hayes sat near the back with her 10-year-old daughter Amy. The Sullivan family had twin boys, Danny and Kevin, both 8 years old and full of energy. 12-year-old Lisa Park spent most of her time reading books about space exploration. Jake smiled as he watched the children through the security monitors. Danny Sullivan was showing his brother Kevin a collection of alien rocks he had found on Haven Prime. Lisa Park was explaining something about star navigation to Amy Foster, who listened with wide eyes. The children laughed and played, safe and happy in the passenger cabin. For 300 years, children like these had been protected by the most important law in the galaxy. The Zephyrian Accord was created after something terrible happened, long ago. Humans had fought back so hard when their children were hurt that entire planets were destroyed. The alien races learned to fear what humans would do to protect their young ones. The law was simple and clear. No alien could harm, capture, or even touch a human child under 16 years old. Any alien who broke this rule would see their entire world turn to ash. Every species in the galaxy knew this law. Every government followed it without question. Jake had grown up hearing stories about the time before the Accord. His grandfather told him about the war that started it all, about human ships that appeared like ghosts in the night to destroy anyone who threatened their children. The old man's eyes would get dark when he talked about it. Never again, he would always say. The galaxy learned that lesson well. The ship's computer made a soft beeping sound. They were about to drop out of hyperspace for a routine fuel stop. Jake pressed some buttons and spoke into his radio. "Attention passengers, we will be stopping for fuel in 5 minutes. Please stay in your seats during this time." The stars stopped stretching and became normal points of light again. Jake looked out the front window and felt his stomach drop. Where there should have been empty space around the fuel station, he saw dozens of huge warships. Their dark metal hulls were covered in spikes and weapons. Red and gold symbols marked them as Krillian vessels. The Krillians were warriors, tall, and strong with gray skin and 4 arms. They had been fighting humans for 20 years, but they always followed the Accord. Jake had met Krillian soldiers before. They were dangerous, but honorable. They would never hurt human children. A deep voice came through the radio, speaking the rough Krillian language that sounded like rocks grinding together. Jake's computer translated the words into English. "Human vessel, prepare to be boarded for inspection. Do not resist." Jake pressed the button to respond. "This is Captain Morrison of the transport ship New Horizons. We are a civilian vessel carrying families and children. We will comply with inspection." A huge Krillian ship moved closer to the New Horizons. Metal arms reached out and grabbed Jake's ship, holding it tight. Jake could hear the passengers talking nervously in the cabin behind him. He turned to look at them through the doorway. "Everyone stay calm," he said. "This is just a routine inspection. The Krillians follow galactic law. You and your children are safe." Dr. Webb stood up from his seat. "Captain, should we be worried? I know the Krillians have been at war with us, but they have always respected the Accord." Commander Hayes put her arm around her daughter Amy. Even though she was retired from the military, Jake could see her soldier instincts were alert. "The Accord has kept our children safe for centuries," she said. "No alien would dare break it." 20 minutes later, the airlock door opened with a loud hiss. 3 Krillian soldiers walked into the ship. They were huge, almost 7 feet tall, with thick gray skin and eyes like black stones. Their leader wore the uniform of a fleet admiral. Jake recognized the rank symbols from his time in the Merchant Academy. The Krillian admiral looked around the passenger cabin. His 4 arms hung at his sides and his face showed no emotion. When he saw the human children, he stopped walking. For a moment, he just stared at them. Danny Sullivan looked up at the alien with curious eyes. "Are you really from another planet?" he asked. The Krillian admiral's face softened slightly. "Yes, young human. I am Admiral Vextar of the Krillian, 3rd Fleet." He turned to his soldiers and spoke in his own language. Jake heard the computer translate. "Keep your distance from the children. The accord must be observed." Admiral Vextar walked through the ship, checking cargo and passenger documents. He moved carefully around the children, never getting too close. Jake watched as Lisa Parks studied the alien with scientific interest, while Amy Foster stayed close to her mother. The Sullivan twins whispered to each other about how cool the aliens looked. "Your papers are in order, Captain Morrison," Admiral Vextar said after 30 minutes. "We are at war, but we are not without honor. Your children are safe." Jake felt relief wash over him. The inspection was almost over. In a few minutes, the Krillians would leave and they could continue to Earth. He started to relax. That was when everything went wrong. The sound of weapons firing came from the Krillian ship. Admiral Vextar spun around, his 4 hands reaching for his weapons. His soldiers moved to protect him, but it was too late. The airlock door burst open and more Krillian soldiers rushed in. These ones looked different. Their uniforms were black, instead of gray, and their weapons were already aimed at the Admiral. "War Chief Zarkoth sends his greetings, Admiral," one of the soldiers said. "The old ways are dead. The Accord is dead. You are dead." The soldier fired his weapon. Admiral Vextar fell to the floor without making a sound. The passengers screamed. Commander Hayes pushed Amy behind her and reached for a weapon she no longer carried. Dr. Webb moved to shield the Sullivan twins. A new Krillian walked through the airlock. This one was bigger than the others, with scars covering his gray skin and metal plates attached to his skull. His black uniform showed the rank of War Chief. His 4 arms each held a different weapon. "I am Zarkoth," he announced to the ship. "The weak fools who led my people are gone. We no longer bow to human laws. We no longer fear human children." He pointed one of his weapons at Danny Sullivan. "These little humans have made us weak for too long. Today that ends." Commander Hayes stepped forward. "You cannot do this. The Accord protects them. If you harm these children, humanity will hunt you to the ends of the galaxy." Zarkoth laughed, a sound like breaking metal. "Let them come. The galaxy will see that Krillians fear nothing, not even the humans' precious children." His soldiers moved forward and grabbed the children. Danny and Kevin Sullivan reached for each other as they were pulled apart. Lisa Parks struggled against the alien hands holding her. Amy Foster cried for her mother as she was dragged toward the airlock. Jake felt his world falling apart. In 300 years, no one had dared to break the Accord. No one had been foolish enough to threaten human children. But now it was happening on his ship, to children under his protection. "Please," Jake said to Zarkoth. "They are just children. Take me instead." Zarkoth looked at Jake with cold eyes. "You still do not understand, human. This is not about prisoners or warfare. This is about showing the galaxy that your time of protection is over." The children were taken aboard the Krillian ship. Jake could hear Amy Foster calling for her mother as the airlock door closed. The metal arms released the new horizons, and the Krillian fleet disappeared into hyperspace. Jake stood alone on his bridge, staring at the empty space where the ships had been. For the first time in 3 centuries, human children had been taken by aliens. The Accord was broken. He did not know it yet, but the galaxy was about to learn why that law had existed in the first place. The news spread across human space faster than any ship could travel. Emergency broadcasts went from planet to planet, from space station to mining colony. The message was always the same. Human children had been taken by aliens for the first time in 300 years. The Accord was broken. On Earth, President Helen Carter sat in the emergency command room deep below the capital city. The room was full of military officers, scientists, and government leaders. Everyone looked worried and angry. The big screen on the wall showed Captain Morrison's face as he told his story again. "They took 4 children," Morrison said, his voice shaking. "Danny and Kevin Sullivan, 8 years old. Lisa Park, 12. Amy Foster, 10. War Chief Zarkoth said the Accord was dead. Admiral Peter Kane stood up from his chair. He was a big man with gray hair and scars on his hands from old battles. Madam President, we need to act now. Every human fleet must be called home. Every ship, every weapon, everything we have. President Carter nodded slowly. How long since? The last time this happened, Admiral? 312 years, Madam President. The Battle of Kepler's End. We lost 200 children in that fight. Admiral Kane's voice got quiet. What we did after that battle is why the Accord exists. Dr. Sarah Mills, the President's science advisor, spoke up from her seat. The psychological impact will be severe. Humans across the galaxy will see this as an attack on all of our children, not just these 4. Our response will be intense. President Carter looked around the room. Gentlemen, ladies, I want every human ship moving within 6 hours. Find those children. Find that Krillian and make him pay. Across the galaxy, the human response began. On Mars, factory workers stopped making farming equipment and started building weapons. On the mining world of New Texas, ore diggers came out of the deep caves to volunteer for military service. Even the pirates and criminals who lived in the asteroid belts sent messages offering to help hunt down the aliens who took human children. The message was clear everywhere. Touch our children, face extinction. Meanwhile, aboard the Krillian warship Blood Talon, the 4 human children sat in a dark prison cell. The room was cold and smelled like metal and oil. Amy Foster was crying quietly, while Lisa Park held her close. The Sullivan twins sat together in the corner, whispering to each other. Are we going to die? Kevin Sullivan asked his brother. Danny looked around the cell carefully. Even though he was only 8 years old, he was smart and noticed things. I don't think so, not yet. That bad alien wants something from us. Lisa Park wiped Amy's tears. My dad told me stories about the old wars. Humans always come for their children. Always. We just have to stay alive until they find us. Amy looked up with scared eyes. But what if they can't find us? Space is so big. They will find us, Lisa said firmly. Humans never give up when children are in danger. My dad said that's what makes us different from other species. Danny Sullivan had been watching the guards through the small window in their cell door. The Krillian soldiers walked by every 10 minutes. They always moved the same way, looked the same places, carried their weapons the same way. He was learning their patterns. Lisa, Danny whispered. Some of these aliens don't look happy. I heard 2 of them talking. They don't like what their leader did. Lisa moved closer to listen. What did they say? Something about honor and old laws. One of them said taking children was wrong. In another part of the ship, Dr. Alan Webb and Commander Rita Hayes were locked in a different cell. Hayes was pacing back and forth like a caged animal. Her daughter was somewhere on this ship and she could not get to her. Rita, you need to stay calm, Dr. Webb said. Getting angry won't help Amy. My daughter is scared and alone, Hayes replied. I should be protecting her. Dr. Webb listened at the door. I've been studying these Krillians for years. They value honor above everything else. What this Zarkoth did goes against everything they believe. There will be Krillians who oppose him. Hayes stopped pacing. You think they might help us? I think this war chief has started a civil war among his own people. We might be able to use that. Dr. Webb was right. On the Krillian homeworld of Krillia Prime, the news of the broken accord caused chaos. In the Great War Council chamber, General Mordak stood before hundreds of other military leaders. His forearms were spread wide as he spoke. Zarkoth has brought shame upon our people, General Mordak declared. The accord exists for good reasons. The humans' response to harm against their young ones is not something any species can survive. Other Krillian leaders spoke up from the crowd. The humans have grown soft, one said. They hide behind their children like shields. You are wrong, General Mordak replied. 300 years ago, we saw what humans do when their children are threatened. Entire star systems burned. Whole civilizations ended. The humans did not stop until every being who had harmed their young was dead. An old Krillian warrior raised his hand to speak. I was there during the Kepler Wars. I saw human mothers flying warships into our battle stations. I saw human fathers, walking through plasma fire to reach captured children. They did not act like soldiers. They acted like something far more dangerous. General Mordak nodded. Exactly. We are warriors, but humans become something else when their children are in danger. They become unstoppable. Back on the Blood Talon, the human children were showing more courage than anyone expected. Amy Foster had stopped crying and was now helping Lisa Park look for ways to escape. The Sullivan twins were working together to loosen a metal plate. On the wall. I can fit through the air vent, Kevin Sullivan said. I'm smaller than Danny. No, his brother replied. We stay together. Mom and Dad always said to stick together. Lisa Park found a loose wire near the door controls. If I can connect this to that power source, maybe I can short out the lock. Amy. Foster was listening at the door. Someone's coming, not the regular guards. The door opened and a Krillian soldier looked in, but this one was different. He moved quietly and looked around nervously. He spoke to them in broken English. Children, I am sorry. This is wrong. My name is Carthen. I serve Admiral Vextar, who War Chief Zarkoth killed. Lisa Park stepped forward. Are you going to help us? Carthen looked around to make sure no one was watching. I cannot free you, but I can tell you something important. Many Krillians do not follow Zarkoth. We remember the old wars. We know what happens when human children are harmed. What happens? Amy Foster asked. Carthen's 4 eyes looked sad. Your people come like a storm. They do not stop. They do not show mercy. They turn planets to glass and stars to darkness. This is why the Accord exists. Danny Sullivan looked up at the alien soldier. Are our parents coming for us? Not just your parents, young human. All humans everywhere are coming. Ships that have not flown in decades are being prepared for war. Weapons that were locked away are being brought out. Your people do not fight for territory or resources. They fight for you. Carr then started to leave, then turned back. War Chief, Zarkoth thinks he can use you to make humans afraid. He does not understand. Taking human children does not make your people afraid. It makes them angry, and angry humans are the most dangerous force in the galaxy. After the alien soldier left, the children sat quietly for a while. Finally, Lisa Park spoke up. We need to be ready. When the rescue comes, we have to be able to move fast. Amy Foster nodded. My mom always said that humans never leave anyone behind. Danny Sullivan looked at his brother. Mom and Dad are coming for us. I know, Kevin replied. And they're bringing everyone else too. Outside their cell, they could hear Krillian soldiers arguing with each other. Some voices sounded angry, others worried. The ship itself seemed different now, with alarms going off and officers running through the hallways. War Chief Zarkoth had thought that taking human children would make his people look strong. Instead, he had started a war that would consume everything. The children did not know it yet, but human fleets were already moving across the galaxy toward them. The hunt had begun. Admiral Peter Kane stood on the bridge of the human battleship Retribution, watching the largest fleet in human history gather around him. Hundreds of warships filled the space near Earth's moon. Military vessels, merchant ships with guns bolted to their hulls, and even old museum ships that had been pulled out of retirement and given new weapons. Admiral, his communications officer said, we're getting calls from human colonies everywhere. They all want to join the hunt. Kane nodded. Put them through. The main screen showed faces from across human space. A mining foreman from the asteroid belt, a scientist from Europa, a farmer from New Dakota, a pirate captain from the Outer Rim. They all said the same thing. They wanted to help find the children. This is Captain Roy Smith from the merchant vessel Lucky Strike, one face said. We've got mining explosives and angry crew members. Where do you want us? Kane had seen humans angry before, but this was different. This was not just anger, this was something deeper and more dangerous. Every human in the galaxy felt like their own children had been taken. All ships prepare for hyperspace jump, Kane announced. We follow the trail of that Krillian fleet. We bring our children home. On the planet New Shanghai, Dr. Emma Chen worked in her laboratory without sleeping for 3 days. She was building new weapons. Terrible weapons that no human had ever made before. Other scientists on other worlds were doing the same thing. They shared their work freely, not caring about patents or profits. If they want to break the rules, Dr. Chen said to her assistant, then there are no more rules. The weapons she created could turn entire ships into dust. The weapons her colleagues made could destroy planets from the inside out. Humanity had always been careful with such power, but now their children were in danger and being careful was not important anymore. Meanwhile, aboard the Blood Talon, the human children were putting their escape plan into action. Lisa Park had been working on the door controls for 2 days. Danny Sullivan knew exactly when the guards would change shifts. Kevin Sullivan had found a way to loosen the wall panel. Amy Foster kept watch and listened for approaching footsteps. Now, Lisa whispered. She connected the loose wire to the power source. Sparks flew and the door lock clicked open. The children moved quickly and quietly into the corridor outside their cell. The hallway was empty, but they could hear Krillian voices arguing in the distance. Danny led them toward the maintenance shafts he had been watching. The openings were small, but human children could fit where adult aliens could not. This way, Danny whispered. The air vents lead to the communication center. The 4 children crawled through the narrow passages inside the ship's walls. It was dark and scary, but they stayed together. Amy was frightened, but she did not cry. Lisa helped her when the passages got difficult. The Sullivan twins worked as a team, with Danny leading and Kevin watching behind them. They could hear Krillian voices through the walls. Many of the aliens sounded worried or angry. Some were arguing about what War Chief Zarkoth had done. "This will destroy us all," one Krillian voice said. "The humans are gathering their fleets. Soon they will come for revenge." "Good," another voice replied. "Let them come. We are warriors." "You are a fool," the first voice said. 300 years ago, the humans showed us what happens when their young are threatened. They did not just defeat us, they erased entire civilizations from existence. The children kept crawling until they reached the communication center. Through a small grate, they could see Krillian officers working at control panels. Lisa Park studied the equipment carefully. "I think I can send a signal," she whispered. "But we need to get closer." At that moment, in another part of the ship, Dr. Alan Webb and Commander Rita Hayes were executing their own escape plan. Hayes had been loosening the screws on their cell door for days using a piece of metal she had pulled from the wall. When the door finally opened, they moved quickly through the ship. "The children's cell is this way," Hayes said. She knew every corridor of the ship by now, having memorized the layout from listening to guard movements. But when they reached the prison area, they found the children's cell empty and the door open. "They escaped on their own," Dr. Webb said with pride. "Smart kids." Hayes smiled for the first time since being captured. "Amy's always been clever, and those Sullivan boys are tougher than they look." They heard footsteps coming toward them. Krillian guards had discovered the empty cell. Hayes and Dr. Webb had to hide quickly, but they had heard enough. The children were free and moving through the ship. In the communication center, the children had managed to get closer to the equipment. Lisa Park's knowledge of electronics was better than anyone expected from a 12-year-old. She quietly connected some wires while the Krillian officers were distracted by an argument about the war. "Human fleets have been spotted near the Vega system," one officer reported. "Thousands of ships, more than we have ever seen." War Chief Zarkoth's voice came through the speakers. "Let them come. We will show the galaxy that Krillians fear nothing." "War Chief," another officer said nervously, "our own people are fighting against us. General Mordak has declared you a traitor. Half our fleet has joined him." Zarkoth roared with anger. "Then we will fight them too. Bring me the human children. It is time to show the galaxy what happens to those who oppose me." Lisa Park finished, connecting the wires just as the guards started looking for the children. She managed to send out a signal before they had to crawl back into the air vents. The message was simple but clear. "This is Lisa Park aboard the Krillian ship Blood Talon. 4 human children alive and hiding. Please help us." The signal reached human ships 3 hours later. Admiral Kane received the message on the bridge of the Retribution. The entire bridge crew stopped what they were doing to listen to the 12-year-old girl's voice. "Sir," the communications officer said, "we have their location. The blood talon is in the Altair system." Kane smiled grimly. "All ships, set course. For Altair. Maximum speed." Back on the blood talon, the situation was getting worse. Krillian soldiers were searching everywhere for the escaped children. War Chief Zarkoth was screaming orders at his officers. Some of his own crew were refusing to follow commands. The children had made it to a storage room near the ship's engine section. They could hear the sounds of fighting in other parts of the vessel. The Krillian Civil War had reached the blood talon itself. "What's happening?" Amy Foster whispered. Danny Sullivan looked out through a crack in the door. "The aliens are fighting each other. Some of them don't want to hurt us." Through the walls, they could hear explosions and weapons fire. The ship shook violently several times. Lisa Park realized what was happening. "It's not just the aliens fighting each other," she said. "Human ships are here." She was right. Admiral Kane's fleet had arrived in the Altair system and found the blood talon surrounded by other Krillian ships. But these were not Zarkoth's allies. They were General Mordak's loyalist forces, trying to stop the war chief before he made things worse. The space battle that followed was unlike anything anyone had ever seen. Human ships fought with a fury that shocked even the warrior Krillians. They did not try to capture enemy vessels or negotiate surrender. They simply destroyed everything that stood in their way. But the most terrifying sight was not the human warships. It was the civilian vessels that had joined the fleet. Farming ships with mining lasers, transport vessels with missile pods welded to their hulls, even small personal spacecraft flown by ordinary people who wanted to help rescue the children. Captain Jake Morrison was there too, flying his damaged transport ship New Horizons. He had refused to go home after the children were taken. He felt responsible for their safety, and he would not rest until they were free. The battle raged around the blood talon while inside the ship. War Chief Zarkoth realized his mistake. His own crew was abandoning him. Human fleets surrounded him. And somewhere in his ship, 4 human children were loose and causing problems. "Find those children," he screamed at his remaining soldiers. "Bring them to me now." But the children were not waiting to be found. They were making their way toward the escape pods, following Danny Sullivan's memorized map of the ship's layout. They could hear the battle outside getting closer and closer. "Almost there," Lisa Park said, as they crawled through one last air vent. They dropped down into the escape pod bay just as War Chief Zarkoth and his soldiers arrived from the other direction. The alien warlord looked at the 4 human children with his cold, dark eyes. "There you are," he said, raising his weapons. "Time to show the galaxy what happens when humans get too bold." Amy Foster, the youngest of them all, stepped forward. She was scared, but she looked up at the huge alien warrior without backing down. "You made a big mistake," she said in her clear 10-year-old voice. "You hurt human children. Now everyone is coming for you." Zarkoth laughed, but the sound was nervous now. Through the ship's windows he could see the human fleet getting closer. His own people were fighting against him. The children he had thought would make him look strong were staring at him without fear. For the first time since breaking the accord, War Chief Zarkoth began to understand what he had done. Amy Foster stood in front of War Chief Zarkoth without moving. The 10-year-old girl was small compared to the huge alien warrior, but she did not look afraid anymore. Behind her, Lisa Park, Danny Sullivan, and Kevin Sullivan stood together, ready to fight or run. "You think your words can save you, little human?" Zarkoth said, pointing his weapon at Amy. "Your people are too far away to help you now." Amy looked up at him with steady eyes. "You don't understand what you did. My mom told me stories about the old wars. When aliens hurt human children, humans don't just get mad. They become something else." Through the ship's windows, they could all see the space battle raging outside. Human ships were everywhere, more than anyone had ever seen in one place. They fought with a fury that made even the warrior Krillians afraid. Zarkoth raised his weapon higher. "Then let them come. I will show the galaxy that—" His words were cut off by an explosion that shook the entire ship. The lights went out, for a moment, then came back on. Alarms were screaming throughout the blood talon. A Krillian soldier ran into the escape pod bay. "War Chief," the soldier said, breathing hard. "The humans have broken through our defenses. General Mordak's ships are joining them. We are surrounded." Zarkoth turned to look at the soldier, and in that moment, Lisa Park acted. She grabbed Amy's hand and pulled her toward the nearest escape pod. "Run!" she shouted. The 4 children dove into the small escape pod just as Zarkoth turned back toward them. Danny Sullivan hit the launch button with his fist. The pod shot out of the blood talon and into space, carrying the children away from there, kept her. But they were not safe yet. Space around them was full of exploding ships and flying debris. Human and Krillian vessels fought desperately while the children's tiny pod drifted between them. "Look," Kevin Sullivan said, pointing out the small window. "That's a human ship." The transport vessel New Horizons was flying toward them. Captain Jake Morrison had seen their escape pod launch and was coming to get them. Behind him, Admiral Kane's battleship Retribution was destroying everything in its path to reach the children. But War Chief Zarkoth was not finished. His own escape pod launched from the blood talon, chasing after the children. He was not going to let them escape alive. "He's following us," Lisa Park said, watching the alien's pod get closer. Captain Morrison's voice came through their pods. Radio. "Hold on, kids, we're almost there." The New Horizons reached the children's pod just as Zarkoth's pod caught up with them. The alien warrior was trying to grab their pod with his ship's mechanical arms. Jake Morrison did something no transport captain should ever do. He rammed his ship into Zarkoth's pod, pushing it away from the children. The collision damaged both ships, but it gave Admiral Kane's fleet time to arrive. The Retribution and 50 other human warships surrounded Zarkoth's damaged pod. The alien warrior was trapped. Admiral Kane's voice came through the radio, speaking directly to War Chief Zarkoth. "You broke the accord. You threatened human children. Surrender now, and we might let you live long enough for a trial." Zarkoth's reply was full of anger and fear. "I am a Krillian warrior. I do not surrender to humans." "Then you die like the animal you are," Admiral Kane said. The human ships opened fire. War Chief Zarkoth's escape pod was destroyed in seconds, turned into glowing metal and gas. The alien who had dared to threaten human children was gone. But the children were safe. Captain Morrison brought them aboard the New Horizons, where Dr. Alan Webb and Commander Rita Hayes were waiting. Amy Foster ran into her mother's arms, finally allowing herself to cry. The Sullivan twins hugged each other, then hugged everyone else they could reach. Lisa Park smiled for the first time in days. "Are we really safe now?" Amy asked her mother. Commander Hayes held her daughter tight. "Yes, sweetheart, you're safe. And the whole galaxy knows what happens when someone tries to hurt you." The space battle was ending. General Mordak's Krillian loyalists had joined, the humans in destroying Zarkoth's followers. The alien civil war was over, and the side that honored the accord had won. Admiral Kane spoke to General Mordak over the radio. "The children are safe. The one who took them is dead. But this cannot happen again." General Mordak's four-armed silhouette appeared on the screen. "Admiral Kane, the Krillian Empire apologizes for what Zarkoth did. We will make sure the accord is never broken again." "See that you do," Kane replied, "because what you saw today was just the beginning. If anyone ever threatens human children again, we will not stop until every world that supported them is ash." News of the rescue spread across the galaxy even faster than the original kidnapping had. On Earth, President Helen Carter announced that the children were safe and their kidnapper was dead. On Mars, the weapons factories stopped working and the workers cheered. In the asteroid belt, pirates and miners celebrated together. But the galaxy had learned something important. They had seen what humans would do to protect their young. The response had been so massive and so violent that every alien species began reviewing their own policies about human civilians. The Zephyrian Empire, which had created the original Accord 300 years ago, sent a message to every government. In known space, the message was simple. The Accord is not just a law, it is a warning. Remember what you have seen. 3 weeks later, the 4 children were back on Earth. They were treated as heroes, but they just wanted to be normal kids again. Danny and Kevin Sullivan went back to collecting rocks and playing games. Lisa Park returned to her books about space exploration. Amy Foster played in her mother's garden while human warships patrolled overhead. But they were different now. They had faced danger and shown courage that impressed even adult soldiers. They had escaped from aliens who wanted to hurt them. They had seen the entire human race come together to save them. Captain Jake Morrison received a medal for his bravery, but he said the real heroes were the children who had saved themselves. Dr. Alan Webb wrote a book about what had happened, explaining to the galaxy why the Accord existed and why it must never be broken again. Commander Rita Hayes came out of retirement to help create new safety rules for civilian ships. She wanted to make sure that no other children would ever go through what her daughter had experienced. The children stayed friends after their rescue. They met every year on the anniversary of their escape to remember what had happened and to remind themselves how brave they had been. Years later, when Amy Foster was grown up and had children of her own, she would tell them the story of the time when aliens broke the most important law in the galaxy. She would explain how the entire human race had come to save 4 children they had never met. Why did everyone come to help us? Her own daughter would ask. Amy would smile and look up at the stars where human ships still patrolled. Because that's what humans do. We protect our children no matter what. And when someone threatens them, we show the galaxy why that law exists. The Accord was stronger now than it had ever been. Every alien species knew what would happen if they broke it. The galaxy had learned its lesson well. Human children were untouchable once again, and everyone remembered the price of forgetting why.